All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, and yeah, let's just get right into it because yesterday's game, man, we've had a couple frustrating losses this year, but yesterday's game, I guess, ranks. I don't know. Some of these extra inning games are just unbelievable. And yesterday, we're winning 2-1, and Cano gives up the solo home run. We end up losing 3-2. Just frustrating, frustrating, frustrating. I go 1-2 because Burns doesn't get the win, and obviously the Orioles don't win. And so that's that. The one bet that did come through is the Blue Jays didn't score more than 3 runs. They didn't get to four, so it was 3.5, and that went under. And man, the game kind of went the way I thought it would go. Burns pitched really well. Barrios for the Blue Jays is tough. We really got nothing, right? Besides Adley's 2 home runs, and O'Hearn had a base hit in the first inning, and that was it. 3 hits for the whole game. And he was tough, but it's still a game that we should win. And I think whenever you lose a game, it's especially in baseball when they play every day and you have a minor league system and there's so many different players. You want to go back through the roster and think, hey, could we have done anything differently? Should this guy be on the team? Should that guy be on the team? And especially with this Orioles roster, there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to get into that in a second, but just to kind of put a bow on these. So it's now been 100 games. My record is 53-47. So it's 53%. And it doesn't feel like a good 53% because as I said in the chat, I was at over 60% last week. So just a terrible week. And then 1-2 yesterday. So 53%. I guess if you told me I'm finishing at 53% by the time this Orioles season's finished, I'll probably say and be like, okay, like I won't be disappointed, but I won't be happy about it. I'd really like to get to 60%. That's my goal. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, got to snap out of this. Got to figure out if there's something I need to look at a little bit differently, or just sometimes you go through these streaks, and the key is, do you believe in the process? Do you have a process? Do you have rules in place? And if you do, and you trust yourself, then you just keep fighting through it. And that's where I'm at right now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I want to talk about the roster and just offer my perspective on certain players and certain decisions that have to be made. And I guess the premise for all of my thoughts center around July 31st, because that's when the trade deadline is. And it feels like the way Elias is treating everything is it's almost like a glorified spring training for certain guys, tryouts, if you will, all the way up until we have to make a decision. So the first, let's kind of go backwards first, and then we'll deal with what we have to do. So the first decision was made, to bring in Corbin Burns by getting rid of Joey Ortiz. So DL Hall was expendable. Because they have so many different pitchers, they weren't sure exactly what role to put him in. But Ortiz, and he was a prized, pitcher. We only had so many pitchers. So for the Brewers to get a pitcher back, that was the guy they wanted. Now the conversation between Westberg and Norby and Ortiz and Mayo and a handful of other guys and who the Orioles wanted to get rid of, it was easy to get rid of Ortiz because of the logjam in the infield. So the logjam in the infield, they tried to make it very simple when they brought up Jackson, I guess however long ago it was, a few weeks ago. And the solution was, if you play well, you get to have second base. Westberg can have third base, and that'll be that. We'll figure out what to do with Mateo and Arias. That'll be like a good problem to figure out because you'll just take that spot. But in order to take that spot, you have to perform at a level that we're going to give you a short leash, apparently. So that doesn't work. So that's the first wrench in the game plan, because if Jackson would have just performed well, he would have taken that second base spot and would have been one less decision to be made. He doesn't play well. They make the decision. We're not going to see him for a couple months. Like, I don't know exactly when he's going to come back, but my guess wouldn't be for at least another month or so, because now it becomes, one of two things. How do we increase Mateo and Arias' trade value, especially Mateo? Or does Mateo just keep that spot? Do we not want to trade him? I don't think they ever want to trade Mateo. He's like the guy that you don't want to face in the postseason when you need that pinch runner. My gut feeling is Mateo stays no matter what. It's more about where does Arias end up. So at this point, the infield is set. meaning they're not going to bring up Mayo and they're not going to bring up Norby or bring up Jackson until Mateo loses that spot. And if he doesn't lose that spot, he gets to be primarily the starting second baseman. And by losing that spot, it would be to go to the bench. Like at worst case, Mateo will end up on the roster on the bench for the playoffs. I don't know if he'll maintain that second base spot. My gut says he won't, but it might take another month or so. Like they're going to let him have the time to figure it out. And if they get a great trade for him, I guess they'll consider it. But I don't think he ultimately gets traded, and I think he ends up as the utility infielder. So he gets that opportunity, and Arias. And for I don't like to talk down to anybody, but I think a lot of people are aware that it's not that Arias is better than Norby or better than Mayo. It's just he doesn't need those two guys need to play every day, and because of the logjam, like I said, with Mateo taking that everyday second base spot, there's no need to bring up Norby or Mayo. Right, Westberg has been outstanding, probably better than people thought he was going to be. So he gets to play every day. Gunnar obviously gets to play every day, and Mountcastle pretty much gets to play every day. So there's really no room for Norby and Mayo to come up. And Jackson, you would say he's next in line, but yeah, they're one of those three. Excuse me, Jackson won't get traded, and I really don't think Mayo gets traded. I do think they want to see Norby up here before they trade him, but man, there's not a ton of room. So when you round out before we get to the outfield, because that's the more I think pressing matter, you look at O'Hearn going into the season, and they said basically you get to play for your spot. So if O'Hearn didn't perform well, it'd be really easy to just replace him. It'd be because there's the guys there, whether it's Kerstead, Stowers, or one of these righty guys I just mentioned, Mayo or Norby. If O'Hearn just wasn't performing, he'd be the easy guy because you're not paying him very much money. Yet last year was a flash in the pan. O'Hearn's like the best. There's no way you're benching him. Yesterday, I almost felt stupid. I guess it would have ended up being a losing bet because I didn't bet his over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBI. It's almost like a tradition every time the odds are good and O'Hearn's in there because all he does is produce. And he gets a leadoff single, so I'm immediately like, of course, in his first at bat, he gets a single. I should have just done it. His next at bat or his third at bat was should have been a home run. Guy made a hell of a play in center field. So just missed that. And then in the ninth inning, I believe he led off and the shortstop made a good play. So he ends up having a 1-for-4 night, doesn't get his hits, runs, and RBIs, but he's seeing the ball so well. And they're playing him in these different outfield spots to essentially give him the opportunity to play as much as possible. So it doesn't look like his spot's going to be up for grabs anytime soon. So everything in the infield seems solidified. And then as an Orioles fan, you're like watching, you're like, man, I really want Norby or Mayo or Jackson to come back up here. Okay, well, then you got to root against Mateo, or you got to root for Gunnar or Westberg to get hurt, or Mountcastle to get hurt. And it's like it's weird. Of course, you don't want to root for those things, but of course, you want to see the young guys and see if they're good enough. So it's a struggle, but that's my analysis is everything revolves around whether or not Mateo will be a starter or on the bench. And once they make the move to put him to the bench, if that becomes the case, if he's not hitting well enough and they're just ready to break, and I think the answer is Jackson comes up. Jackson gets another crack at it. Arias is off the team. No problem because Mateo just takes Arias' spot, right? So that's an easy fix. That's what they tried to do a few weeks ago. It just didn't work out for Jackson. The harder decision is what you do with Norby and Mayo, because where do you fit them in? Can you fit them in? And like I said, do you want to fit them in? Because it requires an injury to Mountcastle, Westberg, or Gunner, which obviously would be horrible. So we don't want that. All right, let's go to the outfield. And yeah, we have a few months to figure out this with the infield. We'll see. God forbid if there is an injury that makes certain decisions a little bit easier. But yeah, the outfield, I think, is where everybody has an opinion. So I'm going to give you mine. Let's start with where we're at. Mullins, Santander, Hayes are all in the same boat. 1-year contracts, been here forever, entrenched as the starters. So let's be 1,000% clear on what while Elias is doing a tryout for the younger guys, while he's bringing up Kerstead and Jackson and now Stowers to give him everybody an opportunity, um, those three guys are the ones being evaluated the most. Those are the three guys you have to decide, do they stay with the team come July 31st? I don't think there's a world that Cowser or Kerstad gets traded, like no matter what. So there is a world where Mullins, Santander, or Hayes gets traded. And that's the decision that Elias has to make, because it's one thing to shuffle these guys in and out for the next couple of months. And I'm in favor of it because I get it and it's a long season. But once we get to August, we got to have these are our guys. This is what we're doing. This is the order of operations. This is the chain of command. It's better, excuse me, for the locker room that way. It's better for players to prepare. It doesn't mean we have to do the Buck Showalter where every lineup's the same, but we do need to have more rhythm that we're having now. It's just, that's a fact. So what are they going to do in the outfield? Well, the first thing that they would like to do, what Elias would absolutely like to do, is all three of those guys be the starters. And meaning if Mullins, and it starts with, I guess, Mullins right in the middle, right? Because his center field, I think Mullins is in the Mateo category, meaning I don't think there's a world that Mullins gets traded. I think there's a world where he becomes the fourth outfielder at worst. They're not going to trade him because he's not, for literally the same reasons as Mateo. You don't want to face him in the postseason with his base running. And then his superior defense, even if you don't want to start him in the playoffs, you're going to want to bring him in that seventh, eighth inning to play center field. It's just, he's too good out there. It doesn't make sense to move him, and you're not going to get anything for him besides some minor league prospects. It just doesn't, I see a world where maybe Mullins isn't on the team next year and they don't necessarily pay him in the offseason. But to trade him at the deadline, I don't see it. I see him having the opportunity over the next 2 months. I don't see him going down to AAA. It just doesn't make sense for what the Orioles are trying to do. Meaning they got to win every single game. That's the mentality. And in order to win every single game, the best way to do that would have Mateo be a base runner if you need it, and have Mullins be in center field at the end of the game. So with that in mind, I don't see those two guys leaving the team. Mullins could end up as the fourth outfielder. So let's leave that there. Now let's go to Santander, because I think he's more complicated than Hayes, frankly. Santander, 1 year deal. Really don't see, like, you don't want to trade him, because I think similar to Mullins, you're not going to get somebody for this season that would help you more than having Santander. The question becomes, do you believe in 2 months from now, Santander is better than Kerstead / Stowers / Cowser, right? Let's leave Hayes alone. Just one of those three guys. Do you prefer Cowser, Stowers, or Kerstead to play every day in right field? If you did, you would base that on two things. One, they would have to hit lefties as well as Santander does from the right side, meaning Santander, being the switch hitter that he is, always gets the play, and especially when his bat's rolling, whereas Cowser, Kerstead, and Stowers are lefties only. And Santander's defense has been great. So those are two factors. If it wasn't for the contract situation, I don't think it would even be a question to trade Santander. I think the question with him is, can I get something for him that's worth it, versus do I want him on the team? And if I had Kerstead out there every day or Stowers out there every day, would that actually be an improvement? And that's a really, really, really tough call, and one that we frankly just, Elias will want to make that decision in a couple months. No need to make the decision today. Still got 10 weeks to make that decision. That's what it comes down to, because you're not going to re-sign Santander. I just don't see a world where he gets re-signed, because you have all these prospects that have to play, and Santander is going to get paid. He's going to get a nice contract. Maybe they choose between him and O'Hearn at the end of it. We'll see. I think there's a world that Santander gets traded if these prospects and down in AAA are just tearing it up and he's kind of struggling. But my money would say 75% he doesn't get traded. I think he gets to keep his spot. and they just ride it out. I think that bat and his defense, the leadership. So I don't think Santander gets traded, but he can't move to the fourth outfielder. If they don't want to play him every day, he gets traded. Different situation than Mullins. Hayes is the, I guess the easy guy for people to say, well, let's just get rid of him. He's not playing well. He didn't play well at the end of last year, but Hayes is going to get another crack at this thing. So Hayes is going to be up. I'm assuming he'll be in the lineup. Well, I know he'll be on the lineup tomorrow because we face a lefty. I'm not sure if they'll let him bat tonight. He's probably in a platoon situation right this second, meaning he'll play against lefties, but not against righties. He hits lefties extremely well when he's healthy. I have a great feeling he's going to come back super strong. And I don't, similar to Mullins and Santander, they're right in this category. You're not going to get much back for him. And he's the right-handed bat. So it'll be interesting as they move into the offseason, whether or not Mayo, Norby, or even Westbury can be converted to a left fielder because they're going to want that right-handed bat in the outfield. Excuse me. But for this season, I think Hayes, as long as he can perform up to par for the next couple of months, I think he gets to keep that spot. I don't think that they want to move off of him, but they will. He's not going to have, they won't worry about not getting nothing for him if they feel like the replacement in left field is just better. So if they can't get value for him, they'll just move off because he's on a 1-year deal. All three of those guys, it wouldn't shock me if they're not on the team next year. It really is going to depend on what the market is. But for this season, I don't see those three guys getting moved. And if they don't get moved and they're entrenched as the starters, or at least Mullins, turns into the fourth outfielder, I think what Elias is trying to do is have a competition for that fourth outfield spot. And Cowser won it in spring training. He won it the first month of the season, obviously, as rookie of the year. But he's been struggling, and Kjerstad had his shot to come up. I know many people, including myself, are like, hey, he didn't get a fair shot at it. He's not playing every day. It's like, all right, well, that's life. You got to make the most of your opportunities. He didn't. Now he goes down. Now Stowers gets a shot to go up. And McKenna had his chance to be up here, but he's not on the level of, as a prospect of Stowers, Cowser, or Kjerstad. So it was easier to get rid of him the other day. And that's where I think we're at for the next couple of months. It's Stowers' turn. And if you really just simplify everything and take a deep breath and you're like, all right, what moves are there to be made? It's Jackson comes up when it's time for him to start every day, and Arias can take a hike. I love Arias, but it's just that's the reality. And Mateo becomes the backup infielder. And Stowers, Cowser, and Kjerstad, because Cowser doesn't have that guaranteed spot. It was a tough at bat last night. It's been a tough couple of weeks for him. They got, it's not like they're opposed to sending him down either. So between the three of them, they're battling with Mullins, Santander, and Hayes to figure out who gets to stay on that team. And then you get one extra guy in September, and they'll do that. So two of those three guys will have a shot in September to kind of fight it out to see who eventually gets to make the playoff roster. And that's where I see the Orioles ending up this year. I don't see them making almost any significant trades. It might bother some people. It's not going to bother me because I'm looking at it from the perspective of Elias doesn't want to trade one of these guys before he has an opportunity to evaluate them. So when you get to July 27th, July 28th, and you're like, man, do you want to trade Norby or Mayo or Kjerstad, Cowser or Stowers? It's like, I really don't want to trade Norby off limits and Mayo off limits because they wouldn't have had a chance to come to the majors yet. So I'm not going to take that chance if I'm Elias to dump them for the bullpen guy, because that's all you're trading. You're trading one of these guys prospects for one of the top bullpen guys. You're not going to trade for a starter, assuming there's no injuries. We have enough starters. That's fine. It's more about the bullpen, right? Everybody knows that. And it's like, all right, well, if you want to get the top bullpen guy, you got to trade the top prospects. But our top prospects are on a different level. We don't have to trade Mayo or Norby. Definitely don't have to trade Kjerstad. Certainly not going to trade Cowser. And that's why Stowers is up right this second, because it's a great problem to have. Either he's so good that he pushes cows are down, or he pushes Mullins to the fourth outfield spot, and you can't bench him because he's too good, or he's decent and his trade value is solid, and you package Stowers with a couple of your lower end prospects, and you get a bullpen guy. But you're not going to see Elias risk, 4 or 5 years from now being like, I can't believe I traded Norby or Mayo or Kerstead before I gave them a full opportunity. It just doesn't make sense, especially with the contract situation of the three outfielders. It's just not going to happen. So while it's fun stuff to talk about, what's more, I guess, fun for me is analyzing each game every day, because I feel like once you really get inside of when you really talk it through and you think about what Elias is thinking about and what decisions he has to make, it's really not going to do anything for a couple months, and everything will play itself out. There's no rush to trade anybody. We are 26-14. Everything is good, but we want to add a bullpen guy. That's the reality of it, and we will. But I don't think we have to trade our top couple prospects to do it. And we'll see where Tyler Wells fits in when he comes back, which I'm excited about. I'm not sure exactly what role they're going to put him in, but yeah. All right. I guess that's my 2 cents there on the roster. Sorry if that was too long-winded, but wanted to get that out. I got one more thing for you. Actually, two more things. First thing is, man, so I don't even know if anybody knew the NBA lottery was on Sunday. It just made me think, like, first of all, it's like a 30-minute show. It was terrible. It was a terrible broadcast. It was a 30-minute show. They're interviewing the players, which I don't know. Just I'd rather somebody just tell me about the players and like break down what these teams need. And I guess we got spoiled from the NFL draft. Made me think that I guess I'll make a prediction within the next few years, maybe the next whenever the next collective bargaining agreement is up, the NFL should have a lottery. Maybe not. They can figure out people are smarter than me, but man, the NFL draft is so much fun. They could dedicate a whole night. They can do 2 nights, do like the first 10 picks one night, the next 10 picks the other night. It'll eliminate, because we're going to get to some tanking. There's already been some fishy things in the NFL the last week of the season, wrestling players. Then you got the fantasy, you got the gambling implications. So I think it'll make sense for the NFL to have some sort of lottery. It'll be super intriguing. Anyway, that being said, I kind of wanted to use that. Maybe I'll talk about that more another day, but I wanted to use that to talk about the NBA. And I said this last time. I don't follow hockey, so I really don't have too much of an opinion on anything hockey related. But the NBA, I'm watching a lot of these games, and one thing that's just like sticking out at me is the pace of play becomes very obvious after the first quarter. So you want to go through one set of substitutions and maybe it's like after the first quarter or halfway through the second quarter, depending on the team, certain best players will play. Basically, what I'm trying to say is you want to see all the players that are going to play for that game. You want to see the first run at it. You want to see which bench players are playing, how many minutes they're going to, they're in there for their first, 4, 5, 6 minutes before the rotations begin. So you can tell, especially in the playoffs, because coaching is very, very specific. Hey, what kind of game do we want to play tonight? Do we want to run? Do we want to slow it down? Do we want to shoot early in the shot clock? Are we shooting a lot of threes? What's our focus? And live betting the over-unders in these games seems to me the best and, I don't want to say the easiest, but the best way to analyze what's happening. Because as I said before the game starts, I don't know, games seem like they get conceded and a team gets down by, the Knicks lost by 40 points the other night. So it's hard to figure out if that has any ramification on the game tonight. So I would watch the beginning of it if you want to have action and see, hey, what kind of pace are they playing at? Because whether or not the shots go in is less important about the pace, seeing how quickly we're shooting and the quality of shots. So I wanted to throw that out there. But the NBA they got to do something different. They really got to do something different. The product has to be different. It's just something. I don't know. Maybe the games can't be late at night. They got to be in the afternoon. There's the broadcast. Maybe guys have to be wired so I can hear the trash talking, because the actual game itself, man, I used to love watching basketball. And now, like that Thunder Mavericks, first of all, I fall asleep during almost every single game. It's like I have to wake back up. after the game's over and rewatch it because that just I don't know. It's just they're not keeping my attention, and I love basketball. And I've been talking about this with a lot of my friends and former coaches, where it's like, man, how do I love basketball so much and just don't want to follow the best players in the world? So something's got to give. It'll be curious to see as they're renegotiating the rights deal, where the games end up, and the new broadcast, new announcers. Maybe something will spark it. But all right, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope everybody has a good rest of the day. Yeah, looking forward to getting back on the winning streak here. It's been a tough 6, 7, 8 days, whatever it's been, down to 53%. But yeah, I guess overall, I'm happy with the 53%. Um, but yeah, I'd like to hit that 60%. I shouldn't say happy, satisfied. Like, yeah, it is what it is. But I really want to hit 60%. And then I'll be doing football. So I'll be excited to transition into football. But no matter what, excuse me, I want to make sure that as I'm continuing, the company, I'm doing a ton behind the scenes to figure out exactly who should be part of the company. So that way, when I relaunch, faces will be familiar to people, and you guys can say, all right, this is where I'm getting the advice from, and this is the point of the company. And the point really is going to be just raw, honest information about our bets, what we're seeing for sports betting, and to try to help you guys, navigate the sports betting world. So again, reminder, like if you're betting every day, if you're doing this often, just hit me up. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk things through. There's no stupid questions. So, all right. I hope everybody has a good day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.